Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are jumping into a stack of sources that all point back to one singular and just wildly surprising novel,
Right, we're talking about Marc Levy's The Heart of Everything.
which you might know was originally published in France as Ghost in Love.
And you might pick this up thinking, it's a light read, maybe a gentle ghost story.
Exactly. But what we found, and what we're going to unpack, is that this text uses a really fantastical premise to deliver something, well, something much more profound.
It's a hilarious but also very sharp critique of how we handle family secrets, regret, and, the very nature of what makes love last.
That's really the core paradox of the book, isn't it?
It is. So our mission for this deep dive is to get a really thorough understanding of how Levy uses this absolutely fantastical mechanism, a father's ghost returning for one last favor.
Uh-huh.
And he uses that ghost to basically conduct a forensic analysis of a family's history. It forces the son, the living son, to resolve all this unfinished business of the dead.
So it's less a spooky story and more, a shortcut to emotional maturity.
That's a great way to put it. It's therapy by way of the supernatural.
And the initial reviews really underscore that paradox. They signal right away that this is not going to be some heavy, somber meditation on mortality.
Not at all.
The source material was pretty consistently described as light and funny. I saw one call it a daring, lighthearted, and moving comedy.
And the one that stood out to me was a magnificent conversation between father and son.
Yes, which sets up those critical themes right from the get-go, love and belonging, and of course, that really powerful, often very complicated father-son bond.
It sounds like we're about to witness, a transatlantic farce that's also a therapy session.
Exactly. And to really appreciate the absurdity that unfolds, we have to start by understanding the protagonist's world.
Yes, the very high-stakes, incredibly stressful reality of our protagonist, Thomas.
So we meet him right at this moment that should be his professional apex.
Right. He's a virtuoso concert pianist, and he's set to perform one of the most demanding pieces in the entire repertoire.
Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2.
At the Salle Pleyel, no less.
Yeah.
So this is a moment of just immense pressure, artistic purity, and a whole lot of self-doubt.
Okay, let's unpack that pressure cooker atmosphere a bit.
Yeah.
Because Thomas is in that really lonely space, after the final rehearsal.
Yeah.
He's questioning every single skill he's spent a lifetime mastering. He's looking for that invisible truth, that hidden flaw he just knows is still there.
And I was struck immediately by who he turns to for that truth. It's not the conductor.
No, it's Marcel, the lighting engineer.
Marcel is just a stroke of brilliance in the setup here. Thomas trusts Marcel's ear, the sound and lighting guy, more than anyone.
But why?
Because Marcel has been to more concerts than anyone alive. He's seen it all. He is the ultimate, the unvarnished arbiter of truth and execution.
So when Marcel tells Thomas he's got it down, he punctuates it with that signature phrase.
Believe you me, Mr. Thomas.
It's so grounding, and it's an immediate signal to you, the listener, that Thomas values this raw, unfiltered honesty from really unexpected places.
And that's precisely what he's about to get.
From the most unexpected place possible.
His dead father.
Right, but before the ghost shows up, his mental and physical state is just. It's critical to what happens next. He's exhausted, riddled with performance anxiety, and he's trying desperately to quiet the noise in his head.
So he ends up back at his mother Jean's apartment. He's not looking for spiritual guidance.
No, he wants a cigarette, just a simple cigarette.
Instead, he finds this pack that was forgotten by his mother's friend, Colette.
And inside are 6 masterfully rolled joints.
And this is where Levy introduces that first layer of high-stakes comedy, but it's fused with Thomas's really deep-seated trauma.
The joint is the catalyst.
It is, but we immediately get the backstory that explains Thomas's whole relationship with drugs, and specifically with his father, Raymond.
He'd only smoked pot once before.
As a preteen, yeah, in this classic act of rebellion against his dad, who is this famous surgeon.
And Raymond had drilled into him all these terrifying warnings about what drugs could do to a developing mind.
So that first experience, that trauma-induced rebellion, was legendary in his own mind. He spent an entire evening with this goofy, fixed smile on his face.
Convinced he saw a cow.
A cow nestling between 2 of the ceiling beams. It's such a wonderful, absurd image. The mind just creating nonsense out of fear and anxiety.
It absolutely sets the stage. His coping mechanism involves this kind of hallucinatory escapism, whether he's looking for it or not.
And this time, the hallucination is far more personal.
And far more demanding.
And dressed in freshly shined loafers.
So the moment Thomas takes that third puff, the one that finally gives him the calm he was looking for.
Boom, Raymond appears. 5 years after his death.
And Raymond is not some, vague shadow or a swirling mist.
No, he is the perfectly preserved, living image of his former self. A straight-cut blazer, cuffed tweed pants, the shined loafers. He looks, for all intents and purposes, like the successful, highly critical surgeon Thomas remembered.
And he immediately gets down to business. Not with a hello.
With criticism.
Thomas is curled up on the floor, he's sliding down the door glass, absolutely begging this voice to stop. But Raymond just starts in on his life choices.
Questioning his definition of normal.
Wait, okay, so Raymond's been dead for 5 years. Is this criticism asking how a handsome, virtuoso pianist is spending the night before a huge concert alone at his mom's apartment? Is that actually a reflection of Raymond's own insecurity?
I think that's a fascinating read on it.
It sounds manipulative, like a narcissistic projection, even in death.
The ghost is absolutely framed as an extension of Raymond's repressed personality. Raymond was a man of immense control. A surgeon, right, but he was so emotionally distant. So his criticism of Thomas's supposed abnormality is really Raymond just expressing his own frustration at 5 years of silence and powerlessness. He's trying to establish control over his son from beyond the grave.
Sort of saying, you're only normal when you follow my script.
Exactly. And that leads directly to the reason he's there. The ghost is on a very severe deadline.
He quickly reveals the urgency. He's on a short leave from the afterlife.
And Thomas has to perform a vital service that will determine my fate for all eternity. This is not a casual visit, it's a cosmic emergency.
And the service required is the dramatic core of the whole novel.
Raymond needs Thomas to unite his ashes with the ashes of his great love, a woman named Camille.
A woman Thomas barely even remembers from these fragmented childhood summers.
And this is where the emotional bomb just drops for Thomas. It sparks this raw, filial conflict.
He realizes immediately the extent of his father's secret affair. He confronts him, and he realizes that all those hours Raymond carved out for him on those summer vacations.
The clam hunts, the carousel rides.
The picnics, all of it. It was nothing but a pretext for Raymond to see Camille. Thomas feels profoundly used. Those cherished moments were just camouflage.
It shatters his entire perception of his childhood. He tells Raymond that he nearly died of loneliness growing up in his father's emotional shadow. He accuses him of setting this impossibly high standard.
And the comparison he draws is just heartbreaking. You were this famous surgeon who saved lives, and I just play music.
The surgeon versus the artist. The tangible good versus the ephemeral beauty.
And Raymond, the ghost, has to defend the art. He tries to contextualize his own life. He admits that, yes, he saved lives, but...
No applause when the symphony of scalpels is over.
That's the great revelation of Raymond's own discontent, isn't it? He saved lives, sure, but he craved the emotional payoff. He wanted that instant visible validation that Thomas gets when he plays Rachmaninoff.
This is the emotionally distant man who couldn't hug his son for more than a few seconds without getting uncomfortable. Yet he insists he was overwhelmed with this silent pride watching Thomas perform.
The irony is just profound. He needed to be a ghost to finally say he loved his son.
Exactly. But the ghost doesn't just reveal the father's pride. It reveals the depth of the affair. Raymond explains that Camille was his great love, and when her husband moved the family to California, they maintained this incredibly discreet 20-year correspondence.
So Raymond stayed in Paris for Thomas and Jean, his wife, refusing to disrupt their lives.
But this secret, letter-based romance continued across 2 continents and 2 decades.
That distant 20-year letter-based romance is truly fascinating. It's the emotional antithesis of his public life, his successful, bombastic career. By keeping the relationship at a physical distance through letters, did they achieve a kind of idealized intimacy that Raymond was incapable of in his actual marriage?
I think so, absolutely. The distance protected the love from the mundane realities of Raymond's stoic control and personality. Camille became this sanctuary on paper.
And now, Raymond presents the specific and frankly ridiculous request for their eternal union.
Thomas has to retrieve Raymond's urn, which is hidden behind a copy of Madame Bovary on a top shelf at Jean's house.
Okay, we have to pause on Madame Bovary. That detail is too specific to be random.
Right.
Flaubert's novel is the quintessential story of adultery and romantic disillusionment, hiding the ashes of an adulterous surgeon behind a book about a woman seeking passionate fulfillment outside her marriage. That's a perfect piece of dark comedy.
And commentary on Raymond's double life. It's brilliant. And Raymond's argument for the good shake and the scattering is just as poetic. He argues that a grave is just a tiny studio, cramped, silent, limiting,
He and Camille deserve a huge terrace with an ocean view.
implying the afterlife rewards passion and freedom over conventional structure. And the urgency is paramount. Camille's funeral is in San Francisco in 3 days.
Which immediately elevates the narrative from a family drama to this insane transatlantic caper involving human remains.
And Thomas, despite his exhaustion, his rage at being used, his fundamental belief that this is all just a figment of a highly expensive joint,
He agrees to help.
he promises his father he will listen, if only to get him to leave so he can focus on his performance.
The commitment is made.
And the chaos, logistical, physical, and emotional, begins immediately.
What's so fascinating to me is Thomas's commitment, even when every logical part of his brain is screaming no. After that initial promise, the logistics of this San Francisco mission, they become his central consuming focus.
And the first hurdle is a big one. Getting Raymond's remains from his mother, Jean.
This interaction is just superb. It tells us everything we need to know about Jean. She's characterized as a 60s girl.
Right. She's unconventional, loves freedom, clearly smokes weed, her own very good weed, not just the forgotten pack. And she has this natural impulse to provoke and avoid formality.
So Thomas's clumsy attempt to ask about the urn, where are Dad's ashes exactly, is just met with this delightful indifference.
Her response is pure gold. She jokes about using Raymond's ashes to test her new bagless vacuum cleaner.
As if his remains are just domestic clutter.
But then she guides him to the exact spot Raymond mentioned. Top shelf, behind Madame Bovary. She admits she kept the letters from Camille, but she respected Raymond's lockbox. And then she reveals her own layer of psychological complexity.
Yes, she confesses that hiding Raymond behind that particular novel was her little act of revenge.
Which implies she knew, or at least she suspected, the depth of his emotional infidelity.
The exchange paints this picture of a complex, sort of friendly but distant relationship they maintained, even after their divorce. She didn't scatter the ashes because she respected his finality.
But she also wasn't going to let him rest in honor.
It demonstrates that the entire family was just living under this cloud of Raymond's emotional distance and secrets.
So Thomas escapes with the urn, and the journey begins. He buys a last-minute, brutally expensive coach ticket.
€1,000.
And it lands him right next to the airplane bathroom. The journey itself starts as a punishment.
And Raymond, who had gone silent after Thomas packed, experiences a kind of ghostly glitch.
Right. He only reappears once Thomas is fully seated, buckled in, and suffering from the proximity to the laboratory. And his return is, naturally, marked by immediate critique.
He's a first-class snob stuck in coach.
Totally. He immediately comments that he travels for free, a perk of his condition, and then starts eavesdropping on Thomas's phone call.
And judging his friends, he calls Serge terribly boring.
Even death hasn't stripped Raymond of his fundamental critical nature. He is the ultimate, inescapable travel companion.
And this is where it gets really interesting structurally. The mid-flight emergency is arguably the turning point of the entire novel.
Absolutely. A passenger in first class has a severe medical emergency, flight attendant calls for a doctor, and Raymond, the former surgeon, just takes over.
The scene is so meticulously detailed and dramatically rich. Thomas raises his hand to volunteer.
An automatic, maybe subconscious reaction to his father's presence.
But Raymond literally takes possession of his son's consciousness and body. Thomas starts speaking highly specific medical knowledge he just doesn't possess.
He's diagnosing the issue, ordering a flight attendant to get glucagon from the man's bag, and administering the injection.
And the detail that grounds Raymond's expertise is perfect. Thomas notes the man didn't smell like apples, which means it wasn't diabetic ketoacidosis. That's a very specific, rapid diagnosis under pressure.
Thomas felt completely possessed, a puppet speaking through his father's voice.
This raises a powerful question about control versus intimacy, doesn't it? Raymond struggled his whole life to show physical affection or genuine love to his son.
And yet now, in death, the only way he can truly connect with Thomas, the only way he can physically inhabit his son's world, is by taking over his body to do the one thing he knew best.
Saving a life.
And he says that line.
Every parent's dream, living on in their children's hearts. It's hilarious, but it forces Thomas to realize the physical and psychological connection he now has with his father, whether he likes it or not.
And that physical intrusion gives Thomas this crucial perspective shift, which is essential for his character arc. He feels this incredible rush after the man wakes up.
A rush that is nothing compared with what I felt the moment that man regained consciousness.
Think about that comparison. The virtuoso pianist, whose professional peak is performing Rachmaninoff's Second Concerto, a piece of massive emotional and technical complexity, finds that the feeling of saving a stranger's life instantly dwarfs his greatest artistic achievement.
That moment profoundly questions his entire career path. Is art enough if he knows this primal, life-affirming adrenaline exists?
It sets up the central tension he faces going forward, the pursuit of emotional purity through music versus the raw, messy, necessary urgency of human connection. We have to slow down on this moment because it's the engine of Thomas's maturation.
Absolutely. The emotional high of his artistry, which is precise and controlled, is suddenly challenged by the messy, urgent reality of applied skill.
So when he lands in San Francisco, he's still reeling from the possession in this new hybrid identity. He goes to the burial location, San Francisco Columbarium.
And the columbarium is not a traditional cemetery. Levy spends time describing it as a character itself. It's a massive mausoleum, stunning copper dome, exquisite stained glass windows.
And the various wings are named after ancient deities: Solanus, Eurus, Auster, Notus, Zephyrus.
It's a beautiful piece of structural contrast. You have these grand, epic names, Greek and Roman gods of the wind looming over walls filled with these tiny glass cabinets.
And inside the niches, you find urns alongside the most mundane personal effects that tell the story of a life.
It's the contrast between the eternal mythic scale and the extremely personal finite tragedy. It underscores Raymond's initial complaint. A grave is just a tiny studio.
And amidst this setting, he runs straight into Manon Martel, Camille's daughter,
He recognizes her instantly, but not as Camille's daughter.
as his childhood nemesis Popeye.
Manon is immediately drawn as charming, frank, with a delicate appearance that belies a strong personality. She's wearing black jeans and a fitted white blouse, cutting through the formality of the place.
And she, in turn, is immediately drawn to Thomas because he's French.
And she delivers the inciting incident for the funeral. She tells him the hired organist had a severe accident.
Not a noble passing, but a slip in the shower after an attack of dementia, breaking his leg and getting a concussion. Manon is desperate for a last-minute replacement.
A replacement virtuoso.
So Thomas, the virtuoso concert pianist, is hired to play the funeral for the woman his father loved, organized by the daughter of the woman his father loved.
Whom he secretly despised as a child. The layers of absurdity are just fantastic.
The initial repertoire is solemn. Debussy's Clair de Lune, Vivaldi's Gloria. But Manon warns him to be prepared for some strange requests.
And the strange requests arrive fast and hard. Martel, the surviving husband, delivers this pompous reading of Lamartine, but that is quickly followed by the shocking structural shift of the ceremony.
Manon explains her mother wanted the funeral to be joyful, like the second-line parades in New Orleans, a vibrant celebratory procession.
And boom, the music abruptly shifts from somber classical to classic disco hits.
Staying alive, YMCA, let's all chant. The entire atmosphere transforms.
Guests shed their coats, revealing full 1970s attire jumpsuits, bell-bottoms, silver shirts. A spinning disco ball illuminates the copper dome, projecting shimmering light onto the silent, dignified, urn-filled cabinets.
This is such a powerful choice by Levy. The whole scene is about liberation. Camille, who lived this repressed life while maintaining a secret, yearning love affair, insisted that her final act be one of pure, unadulterated 1970s exuberance.
It's a glorious middle finger to formality and expectation.
And the ultimate, most absurd detail, which confirms the spiritual freedom of the dead.
Raymond.
The ghost is seen dancing on the altar, swinging his hips with glee, and winking directly at Thomas, who is now forced to play disco hits on an electric organ in a mausoleum dedicated to the ancient gods.
Thomas realizes he is, bizarrely, conducting the orchestra he always dreamed of, but one for the dancing dead listening to the Bee Gees.
The juxtaposition of the solemnity of death with the joy of disco is the novel's way of saying that grief should be active, alive, and utterly committed to the fullness of the life that was lived, secrets and all.
So we move from the cathartic absurdity of the disco funeral to the central yet profoundly clumsy execution of Operation Urn.
Yeah. Thomas needs to complete his father's mission, but his focus is just. It's clearly scattered by the experience and, well, by Manon.
He is completely distracted. Thomas, the man of meticulous technical skill in his music, is incapable of simple logistics.
He's eager to finally be alone and enact Raymond's unorthodox instructions, so he leaves his canvas bag.
With Raymond's urn inside.
Right near a memorial bench for Gerald Fillmore in 1949-2008.
And Raymond, the fastidious surgeon, can't resist a comment. He jokes that Gerald is likely stuck in the concrete for eternity, contrasting that with the high-flying one he's seeking with Camille.
But Thomas forgets the bag, and the urn is immediately confiscated.
The irony is so rich. Raymond, who was just worried about being confined to a tiny studio, is now under lock and key in the columbarium manager's office.
In a cabinet, crammed between bills and brochures. The staff mistook the urn for a suspicious package. The former surgeon is now officially a bomb threat.
And Raymond is humiliated, joking it's the first time he's been mistaken for an explosive device. Meanwhile, the husband, Mr. Bartel, is already alerted to trouble.
Right. Manon had failed to properly reclose Camille's urn after being interrupted by Thomas, and the manager noticed the broken wax seal.
This immediately sparks the absurd custody battle of the dead.
Bartel, a man described as having high principles, priding himself on honesty and hard work, the total antithesis of Raymond, is alerted to the tampering.
He immediately contacts Detective Pilguez, convinced Thomas is carrying out a post-mortem vendetta to kidnap Camille's remains, succeeding where Raymond failed in life.
Bartel's narrative is just pure, melodramatic revenge fantasy. He's convinced that Raymond, through his son, is trying to steal Camille's body, much like he stole her heart 20 years ago.
It's a demonstration of his own emotional proprietary control over Camille's memory.
And Detective Pilguez is such a wonderfully functional character amidst all this poetry. He is completely skeptical of the crazy motive, a renowned pianist flying across the Atlantic to steal ashes for his dead father's revenge.
But he's intrigued by the sheer poetry of the situation. It's an unusual case.
Pilguez even tries to feed Bartel a slightly more believable version of the facts, that Thomas was just helping his childhood friend Manon, fulfilling some poetic twist of fate.
But Bartel is blinded by pride. He's convinced the theft of the ashes is the ultimate humiliation, proof that Raymond won in the end.
So while the police are chasing this outlandish high art theory, Manon, thanks to Pilguez's subtle hints and some nudges from her cook, Teresa, starts putting the pieces together.
Teresa, who Manon humorously calls management when her father's being difficult, hints that Camille's urn shouldn't be in the library closet. That detail raises immediate red flags for Manon.
And she begins to question her parents' entire history. When Detective Pilguez confronts her with the full truth that her mother and Raymond had this 20-year emotional relationship, memories start rushing back.
She realizes Thomas's face is familiar from her summers with her mother.
She recalls specific, mundane, yet crucial details. The small blue truck Thomas loved, her calling him Popeye because of his humiliating sailor's cap.
And the caramels he used to give her.
The key insight here is that the shared past between Thomas and Manon provides this legitimate foundation for their future connection. It's a foundation built on truth and shared innocent memories, not on secrecy or adultery.
Meanwhile, Thomas is dealing with his increasingly frail, ghostly companion.
Raymond is feeling himself fade. His vision is getting blurry. He's having trouble moving around. His hearing is going.
The very signs of mortality he was trying to escape are catching up to his spectral form.
It's a powerful metaphor. Unfinished business exerts a terminal toll, even in the afterlife. Raymond confesses he can no longer help Thomas break into the locked office to get his urn.
He tells Thomas to give up. He says he'd rather stay at the beach where Camille lived than return to the dusty bookcase at Jean's house.
And this is Thomas's ultimate moment of conversion. He steps out of his father's shadow and into his own moral integrity. He decides he cannot abandon his father.
He refuses to leave Raymond behind in a cabinet of bills and brochures. He tells Raymond he needs to know his father's passion for life is still there, or I'll feel guilty for eternity.
Thomas realizes the mission isn't just about Raymond and Camille anymore. It's about validating Raymond's emotional life, which was so repressed while he was alive. To rescue the urn is to validate his father's capacity for love.
So he takes action. He breaks into the Dignity Memorial Office, a hallowed building, as Raymond puts it, by throwing a rock, shattering a window.
And making a surprisingly graceful leap inside, demonstrating this new, agile self that the flight emergency unlocked.
He finds Raymond's urn hidden among the mundane office supplies and pries open the cabinet lock with a solid silver letter opener. He's ready to complete the mission, but
Raymond delivers the final crushing news. Camille's urn is already gone.
Bartel, paranoid and proprietary, had successfully kidnapped her remains from the columbarium and brought them home to his library closet for safekeeping.
So the initial mission is a total failure. But Thomas has acquired the truth. He realizes he can't handle this like a covert operation anymore. He has to bring Manon into the emotional reality of it all.
He leaves the wooden box with Camille's 20 years of letters to Raymond at her door, along with his own unsent email explaining the whole insane story, the ghost, the ashes, the mission.
Manon reads the letters, consuming 2 decades of secret longing. The letters confirm the absolute depth of her mother's distant love for Raymond. She realizes Camille had been confiding in Raymond, describing her San Francisco life and feelings in detail.
Feelings she likely never shared with Bartel.
And the letters serve as the key to Thomas and Manon's connection. They transform Camille from a dutiful wife and mother into a woman of profound passion and yearning.
Thomas leaves Manon with the tangible proof of his father's great love, and he leaves for Paris, having exposed the truth that will ultimately set the dead free.
So the journey has been defined by this logistical failure, absurdity, and immense emotional revelation. But now, all the players, the living and the dead, are finally positioned for the inevitable conclusion.
The eternal union. Thomas and Manon meet at Baker Beach, a beautiful, sprawling, natural location in San Francisco.
Which immediately contrasts with the cramped, formal, man-made confines of the columbarium.
And Raymond is clearly feeding fast now. He tells Thomas he can feel them calling him back. Just a few hours, maybe a day at most.
The natural setting is critical. It reinforces Raymond's desire for freedom, that huge terrace with an ocean view.
Manon arrives, breathless, having followed Thomas's trail and absorbed the full truth of the letters. She's wearing the black jeans and tailored white top, that same blend of casual elegance and determination she had at the funeral.
And she didn't come empty-handed. She's carrying a big linen bag.
And she admits she stole Camille's urn from her father's library closet. She fought with him, but is confident that Bartel, despite his anger, couldn't hold a grudge against her for long.
So Manon has taken this huge, decisive step. She's choosing emotional honesty and her mother's happiness over her father's proprietary control.
Manon, who's still processing the supernatural logistics of all this, asks Thomas if they need to say anything specific, any incantation or prayer.
And Raymond, impatient and rapidly fading, just gestures, "No, time is running out." But Thomas, who has really grown into his own man over this frantic journey, he takes control of the ritual.
He tells Manon, no one should be asked to bury their parents twice, not even by their parents, so we're going to do things differently this time.
It's an assertion of his adult identity. He's pushing back against the demands of the ghost, even as he fulfills the promise.
He pours Raymond's ashes, the former surgeon, the emotional critic, the devoted lover, into Camille's urn.
And gives it that final, decisive good shake, announcing them united for all eternity.
The ritual is so simple, intimate, and entirely driven by their shared belief.
And as Manon scatters the mixed remains onto Baker Beach, the ultimate magical confirmation occurs. The impossible becomes real for both of them.
The faint silhouettes of Camille and Raymond appear, radiant, passionately embracing.
And Arnon even jokes that Thomas forgot to say they could kiss, which usually comes next. It confirms that even the spectacle of the supernatural has its own set of expectations.
It's the ultimate emotional and narrative payoff to Raymond's request, trading the tiny studio of a grave for the freedom of the ocean air, achieving that huge terrace they desired.
And Raymond, now complete, delivers his final, crucial message to his son.
He urges Thomas not to give up on your passion for life. He presses him not to succumb to the loneliness or fear of commitment that Thomas inherited from the broken parts of his parents' relationship.
And he reminds Thomas that he's already accomplished so much, grounding this cosmic advice in mundane family history, even mentioning their old family joke about sticking with his childhood soccer team, PSG.
It's a wonderful blend of profound advice and personal intimacy. And Thomas, who had already composed a new song in his head during the break-in and the emotional release, tells his father the title.
Ghost in Love.
Raymond, who struggled his whole life to express his immense pride, looks at his son with that lopsided smile he always used to hide his deepest feelings. And then he's gone.
Thomas has completed his emotional conversion. He was forced to confront his father's secrets, reevaluate his career, and break the cycle of emotional distance. He leaves San Francisco, having found connection with Manon and achieving ultimate closure with his father.
And the epilogue just wraps the narrative with beautiful symmetry. 3 planes, and 1 day later, Thomas is back on stage in Warsaw, playing the Rachmaninoff.
This time, though, the music transports him not to the Russian steppe or the traditional interpretation, but to the vivid memory of Baker Beach in California.
The transformation is fully evident in his playing and his focus. When he begins the emotional second movement, he misses a note.
A shocking lapse for a virtuoso. It scandalizes the conductor. And why?
because Thomas hadn't been able to resist scanning the room.
And he sees Manon. She has followed him to the concert. She's sitting in the third row.
The missed note is the perfect symbol of his new priority. He is finally willing to sacrifice artistic perfection for genuine, tangible connection.
The life Raymond urged him to live, one defined by passion and without fear of commitment, is officially beginning, ushered in by a ghost in a shared pile of ashes.
So we followed Thomas's wild, chaotic, transatlantic journey, driven entirely by this bizarre post-mortem request. What truly stands out to me is how this ghost story, which reviewers correctly called a fairy tale for grown-ups, functions as this elaborate mechanism for Thomas's emotional therapy and maturation.
It's absolutely true. The ghost premise is not a gimmick. It's a necessary tool for confrontation. It forced him to reevaluate his career, recognizing that the feeling of saving a life provided a profound validation that his music, while beautiful, couldn't quite touch.
And it ultimately pushed him into finding connection with Manon. Raymond, the renowned surgeon, used his short leave not selfishly but strategically for his son, ensuring Thomas didn't succumb to the loneliness he himself felt in life.
And I think the core insight here lies in Levy's detailed exploration of the thematic interplay between distance and intimacy. Consider Raymond's capacity for affection.
Right. He found physical affection hard in life. He had that masculine stoicism, couldn't hug his son for more than a few seconds without discomfort.
Yet, in death, he literally possessed Thomas in the air, breaking through that physical barrier entirely in order to save a stranger's life.
And what about the central romance between Camille and Raymond?
They maintained a 20-year, long-distance, letter-based romance, finding true intimacy in communication, shared secrets, and yearning despite the physical distance.
The letters provided a space for an emotional honesty that Bartel, Camille's physically present husband, could never elicit. The distance paradoxically facilitated a deeper connection because it was idealized and purely emotional.
Then you have Thomas and Manon, childhood enemies who spent 2 days in close proximity at a funeral and a frantic chase, talking about loss and sharing childhood memories, without even realizing they already knew each other.
They finally connected after decades of distance, misunderstanding, and Thomas's own commitment issues, which his father, the ultimate source of those issues, helped diagnose and resolve.
The novel suggests that the love worth fighting for, or even returning from the afterlife for, is not necessarily the one that fits neatly into societal expectations or physical proximity.
It's the bond built on relentless, honest communication and shared imagination.
Whether that's achieved through 20 years of post or as a ghostly companion on a coach flight next to the bathroom.
And the beauty of Thomas's journey is that he learned that even stories that seem impossible can become real if just two people believe in them. His new chapter of life, defined by this belief, begins with a new composition,
Titled Ghost in Love.
which leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider.
If you learned, like Thomas did, that every unspoken word and secret love affair of your deceased loved ones determined their fate in the afterlife, dictating whether they were stuck in a tiny studio or free on a huge terrace, what final buried secret would you feel compelled to uncover or reveal to set them free?
That's something to mull over the next time you look at a family photo album.